I'm Megan Spurline, news editor at The Vidette, the student voice of Illinois State University, and reporter for WGLT. Welcome to Democracy's Future, a joint project between The Vidette and WGLT News. We hear from the students who will help chart the future of our democracy. On this episode of Democracy's Future, we delve into an issue that has stoked passions of college students on campuses across the country. A group of pro-Palestinian protesters has been gathering on the quad at ISU for over a week. They want the university to call for a ceasefire in the war in Gaza. They also want the university to divest from companies with ties to Israel. 7 of the protesters were arrested and suspended after they staged a sit-in outside the university president's office. Some students say they feel the protests come off as threatening, especially to Jewish students. Delaney Reynolds is president of ISU College Democrats and is a junior biology major from Kewanee in northwestern Illinois. Braden Gonzalez with ISU College Republicans is a sophomore political science major from the Chicago suburb of Frankfort. They shared their perspectives on the protests. Starting with Gonzalez from the Republicans.
I mean, the First Amendment does not protect your right to have a little camp out in the middle of the quad and chant anti-Semitic remarks like river to the sea, Palestine shall be free, which is so clearly anti-Semitic remark filled with pure hatred of a whole group of people.
So you say that you want the university to do more. What exactly would you like to see?
Oh gosh, that's a hard question. I think the university should go up to these guys and be like, hey, I respect your right to free speech, but you do not have a right to hate speech. And then if they continue, you'll be like, you're gone. That's what I think.
Isn't that what they did?
Well, I mean, they're still there. They're still there. They're still making anti-Semitic remarks. The tents are gone, but my issue is not the tent. I couldn't really care less about the tents. I am more concerned that like students are scared for their safety. After I made that comment in student government, Chabad came up to me, like Chabad students came up to me and they said, yeah, I feel so scared. And I've actually been like physically harassed because they'll wear like proud to be a Jew and stuff like that. And it really broke my heart because like I'm just a regular guy. And so people thinking that I like did some great thing for speaking the truth really broke my heart.
Yeah, so I'm definitely on the complete opposition of that. I feel as though the Dean of Student, Dr. Andy Morgan, has kind of taken an extreme use of his power. We put out a statement about basically the Dean of Students coming up and handing out a piece of paper stating that the students encamping on the quad were in violation of policy 6.1.1 subsection 7C, which states that they've constructed a structure on campus, whether I personally wouldn't consider a tent a structure, and we can kind of talk about there have been previous structures, if you want to call it that, built on campus, whether that be with student organizations like RSOs, kind of non-for-profit. I feel as though this has just been kind of a use of power because it is a controversial topic and he doesn't really want them out there any longer. But if we look back further under a previous dean of student, we can see that they had something very similar to this, and that dean of students did not, use his power in an abusive way, such as this. I think threatening students to not have a place to go home at night or to go to the classes that they have paid for is a little bit absurd.
Braden, maybe I'm leading into like stereotypes a little bit here.
I don't mind.
But I feel like typically, like people who are more right-leaning Republicans are typically very much pro First Amendment, yes, which unfortunately, better or for worse, like does protect hate speech. Okay. So I just wanted to get your opinion on like why is it crossing the line?
I'd like to touch up on that. And so I do actually have an issue with the term hate speech because they'll say to like people like Matt Walsh, who's just speaking like science and whatnot, or what he at least thinks is science, which I agree with, by the way. Like they'll call him hate. They'll call like him like what he says is hate speech. I think this is very different. I think what the encampment is currently doing is a more clear example, which is calling for what I think is actual violence. That's the reason, and yeah, that's why I say that.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
So I think the statement that you said before, referring to the statement of to river to sea, Palestinians will be free. Yeah. That's kind of calling for, making sure nobody is oppressed. I don't think that it's an oppression for Jewish people at all. It's kind of just calling for individuals who are currently suffering to no longer be.
Do you think that they were right to have their tents and even just their signs taken down? There's been talk that there have been other protests on campus that weren't stopped in the past.
Yeah. So like I said, there was something called Occupy ISU, and that was a few years back, and they were not required to take their tents down. Like I said before, I think it truly is coming down to the fact that it's a controversial topic, and clearly there is some opposition now that we have students on campus are a little bit riled up about this, and across the country, as we've seen. I think that they are just trying to avoid any sort of issues. However, I think in the end, it's just created more. I do believe that students should be able to speak their mind with their posters and their signs and whatnot. I personally don't think that they are in any sort of violation of the code that they stated previously, but they have abided by what the university wants. They have taken down their tents. So I think as long as, everybody is kind of trying to find a common ground, there should not be any more attacks on what they're doing.
So Delaney, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you feel comfortable with the protesters calling the war in Gaza a genocide?
Absolutely. You can't consider something a war if the other side doesn't have any weapons to fight back. Truly, at the end of the day, we just have seen 35,000 people, innocent civilians, dying, innocent. I must say, they're not fighting back at all. It's just a very sad sight to see, and I think that if we want to call it anything other than that, it would be negligent.
Could I add on to that?
Yeah.
So I think it's the very opposite of a genocide. I think the faster Israel acts, the more Palestinian lives will be saved. Because clearly Hamas could not care less for the Palestinian people. And for that reason, it is almost Israel's moral obligation to eradicate them for the safety of the Palestinian people.
At the end of the day, you can't care if you're dead.
So with the students who were on the quad or still are on the quad, do you think that it was appropriate to threaten suspension to those students who are participating?
100%, yeah.
Can you elaborate?
Yeah, well, because, as I told you, for the tents, apparently there has been exceptions made for certain events in past years. I think probably the university is okay, cool, students want to camp out on the quad, whatever, but this is a little different. You're going to have students camping in the middle of the quad during Success Week and soon to be Finals Week, wearing their headdresses, wearing masks. It's a pretty scary and distracting sight. I mean, I find it almost like a cowardly sight that they all have to wear masks to protect their identity. With my political views, I say them openly without a mask on.
I'm just curious. You used the word scary, but the protesters, from my knowledge, there hasn't been any violence or threats of violence. So I was just wondering why you're calling it scary.
Well, I mean, that's not the story I got from the Chabad students. They told me that they really do fear for their safety. And some students told me they're just not coming back next semester. And that's just really sad.
Yeah, so going along with that, something I did want to ask is that there were several Jewish students who have explained that they have felt unsafe. Have either of you seen any specific signs or behavior that you felt was out of line?
Well, yeah, I think if I was a Jewish student here and I saw River to the Sea, Palestine will be free, I would actually be rather afraid. I don't know how else I would feel about that. They just want Palestine to be free. Everyone should be free. I don't buy into that for a second. You ask the authorities of the people who lead Palestinians today. You say, what do you mean by that? Well, they do not envision a Palestinian state with the Jews in it. And so I don't know how I would see that in any other way other than calling for a genocide against the Jews.
I guess I don't know about everybody else, but I personally believe everyone should be free.
Do you think that the university should be doing more to protect not only the rights of protesters, but maybe students who do feel threatened?
Yeah, I would say so.
I absolutely do think everybody should be afforded the right to feel comfortable on campus. It makes me sad that there are people that feel as though they are currently being attacked. But I think when we look at this, we have to look at both aspects, that there are Palestinian students on campus as well as Jewish students. So I think trying to figure out how we can come to an agreement to, kind of understand that this has nothing to do or is not an anti-Semitic movement at all, rather just a movement to get rid of oppression.
So how do you feel that the pro-Palestinian protests will impact the upcoming presidential race? Many protesters have said they will not be supporting Biden unless he takes more action to support the Palestinians. Does this impact your vote or your thoughts at all?
I think this will greatly affect the election. I think honestly, what I'm seeing is Democrats eating each other, because Joe Biden has to appease his radical youth base. And I mean, the more moderates are like, no, I want to support Israel. I want to support these people defending their nation. And so I really think this is like I was saying, this whole situation breaks my heart. But I think this will be very beneficial for conservatives this coming election. And that's why I'm so excited for the coming election. Well, I'm always excited for the coming election.
I think it's definitely impacted my vote. I do think, however, at the end of the day, we have to kind of look at who's worse. I think Donald Trump has said his own things and been a part of his own controversial issues. I do think, however, in order to win this upcoming election, Joe Biden is really going to have to get it together and start making some moves here.
Yeah, and then Delaney, what would you like to see Biden or just like a presidential candidate do to support the Palestinians moving forward?
I think in general, the topic has been kind of avoided by him. I think speaking about it, being honest about what is happening, divesting money from Israel at the end of the day, it's a hard thing to do. I understand that when you have allies. However, I think for the sake of innocent Palestinian lives, that's kind of what we have to do.
That was Delaney Reynolds with ISU College Democrats and Braden Gonzalez from ISU College Republicans. In our next episode, we'll explore an issue where the two student parties agree on: voter access on campus. They both want the campus to close on Election Day. Our thanks to audio producers Ryan Toohey and Ariel Jones, WGLT Digital Content Director Ryan Denham, and WGLT News Director Eric Stock. Please give us your feedback on this series and let us know if there are certain issues you'd like us to explore. Email us at news@wglt.org. Subscribe to Democracy's Future on the NPR app or wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, I'm Megan Spurline. Thank you for listening.